good, and I appreciate it. There's a whole lot of people in this room that know that I'm an animal lover. I care what happens to the animals. I have not been a good communicator in other retrospects, but you know, when you try to put something positive out about the animal shelter, and then 60 posts later, you know, I look like the Antichrist for, you know, saying something good about the animal shelter. And I just, that method, to me, if I do something wrong, and I get called out on it, and I don't correct it, then I deserve to be beaten about the head and face or whatever. But, you know, don't try to take something where I'm trying to, you know, make this better, and you know, and I'll tell you, it's hard. We're talking about back to communication. You know, I probably get 150 emails a day in my regular duties as commissioner, and when, you know, we have a flare up, or when this all started, I was getting, you know, an additional 100 or 150. So maybe I didn't guide my staff in the way that I should, and said, hey, send them a canned answer, tell them, you know. But I didn't know. The problem was that there are people in this room that I know and trust, and you know, are part of the animal community. There are people in here that I would like to get to know, and like to get them to know me as the person, not as who's being portrayed on Facebook. But you know, it's kind of like Dr. Hayden says, you don't know what to say or what to do in fear of. In the next 15 minutes, it'll be on, you know, Facebook, and it'll be twisted in such a manner that it has zero amount of truth in it. I just feel like we need to, you know, when we leave this room, let's put our differences aside, and let's work towards fixing the animal shelter, and leave the rest of this.
Commissioner, if you always speak the truth and you're always transparent, you don't have anything, nobody can twist that.
Yeah, actually, one thing I think that we're seeing, though, and I mean, just this that we're doing right now is a very helpful exercise to bring the community together. And you know, I think that, I mean, the fact that we're actually having this conversation, and if y'all want to criticize me, that's fine. It seems like, you know, the two commissioners are willing to bear criticism, as is Dr. Hayden and Mark, and so, I mean, that's good. That is communication.
And I'll tell you that, you know, a lot of people wouldn't have showed up. You know, this is not that bad, but it is painful. But my daughter's in the hospital right now having a ultrasound. We're going to find out she's going to go into surgery, and she's going into surgery, I'm leaving. So to think that I don't care about the animal shelter and don't want to be here, I had 2 hall passes, but I chose to be here because I do care what happens to the animal shelter moving forward.
And we appreciate that. Natalie?
Can I say something
okay,
quick?
Yeah,
just quickly?
do that, and then we'll go to you.
I just want to say, I think this is very cathartic. I think this has been needed for a long time, where people could actually sit and talk. I think the workshop was good. I think it was not quite the same format. It wasn't as casual and relaxed as this. There's something that I saw recently in the last couple of days that takes place in Austin once a month, and it's an animal commission meeting. And people from the shelter meet with volunteers and people from the community, and there's an update and input, and can you help us, and we can help you do this, can you help us do that, that sort of going back and forth. Is it possible we could have such a thing? Could we do that?
I think so, yeah, that's easy.
I think that would be a great thing. Does anyone else think that's a good idea?
Yeah.
So,
I think
and I know Dina had to do it at your place. Was it the first?
Yeah, we were doing it monthly, but everybody showed up because they thought there was going to be a fight the first month, and then after that it was very low turnout.
I think if we announce it and we keep it up and get past the fight part, and then just talk about getting better,
well, and there's a format. I will, if I know, I'll send you a link to that. I put it on Facebook today to share with people.
So you know, I missed it.
Well, I'm sure I can find the link and send it to you. But it's a wonderful format to be able to discuss in person.
I would like to say one thing though, just so you pointed out that me and my wife are both veterinarians, right? So we always say we're not going to work together. We do now, and we now know why we don't work together. Because there's 10 ways to do anything in this, and then we just choose to do it opposite. We always arrive at the same end, you know, we want the same thing, we're just gonna go about it in different ways, because our minds work a little different. So, I very much agree that we need to communicate. I think a meeting would be great. Format is something I'll certainly take a look at you at.
Okay.
And because I'm the director and I run that meeting, I'm gonna run it the way I want to. It may turn out very much to be what you have. I'm usually kind of a hybrid guy as far as, you know, take the good and leave the bad, so.
Well, actually, this meeting isn't run by the director, it's run by somebody else.
It's
But-
their, and it's their advisory
Yeah,
committee, but
they're-
it's that, like y'all are doing it for commissioners. Court.
Yeah.
It's like-
Okay,
Fine.
Natalie Sikowski. Kurt.
Roughly 8 years ago, I was on the board for Lone Star Animal Welfare League for 3 years, and that's when Tim Holyfield was running the shelter through the county before he formed Care Corps. We did a big fundraiser and hired Nathan Winograd to come in and assess the shelter, give points of direction, and give an action plan to turn the shelter around to where it was, and it was operating very successfully. And then a lot of changes have happened that's caused it to be where it is now. Have we considered doing maybe a fundraiser like that to have someone like Nathan come in and help us turn this
She's
around from
offered
a
to
third
pay
party,
for him. to
third
come.
party perspective, so that all of us don't have our hands in it, but we have a professional helping us to give us guidelines?
Actually, yes. So, and again, that goes back to two different perspectives or multiple. So, we became a fellow with Target Zero. When you talk to Target Zero, they'll tell you that they have a very similar message to Nathan Winograd. So, it's somebody we're already partnered with. It's Nathan is a little more abrasive, and kind of, some people love him, some people hate him. Target Zero is the same way. Some people love him, some people hate him. But that's the organization we're trying to partner with. So, and they've laid out, they came in and did an evaluation, that's been published and out there.
It's public record.
Yeah, we need to do a better job of following
But
that.
over a year ago, and we still haven't made strides in the right direction, but when we took Nathan Winograd, we had a lot of instant changes,
So,
and a lot of
and I
positive
think-
change.
One of the things we need to do is talk about what success looks like. So, I mean, I have the numbers that go back for 5 years. So, and we need to figure out what we think is good and bad, right? So if one of my things is decreased euthanasias are good. I think everybody in here is gonna say decreased euthanasia is good. So if we go back 5 years ago, how many animals did they euthanize versus how many are we doing today? That's a nice benchmark, right? So it's not the only benchmark. I don't want that to like say that's the only thing I want, but it's a good benchmark. And 5 years ago, they killed a lot of animals. So, and I have those stats. If you want to go through them, we can do that. So,
But it's also based on who compiles the numbers and what animals go into the numbers
So-
that are compiled.
I agree, but I can tell you, every animal that comes to our shelter, alive or dead, gets a number.
At what age?
Any animal with a heartbeat.
Wait, I think this is good.
This is-
We get more questions regarding the
Every
euthanasia.
single animal that comes in our shelter gets a number. Period. What's a
Dead,
a period?
alive.
So
If
why
you brought me a
would-
dead dog, I'm gonna give it a number, and I'm gonna report it.
then why do the numbers not add up? Why do the intake numbers not add up at the end of the day?
I asked him that, it drives me crazy. He has a reason.
We've discussed this, so there's multiple ways, so around the country, there are two kind of ways to account for animals. One's the shelter animal count, one's the Asilomar courts, both of which take in both foster animals that are part of the agency, as they term it, or in other words, the county, that might not physically be in the shelter, as well as animals in the shelter. So the reports are kind of driven to take both of those numbers into consideration. When we sat down with Commissioner Nowak and he's like, I want to start getting some of these numbers, I warned him that the shelter animal count, that what he's asking for the numbers, will not add up, because if something goes out to foster, it technically is still in our overall numbers. If something moves from foster adoption, some of it, those numbers will not add up. We're working with community to kind of try to look at ways to redo it. Actually, no one's ever done it where they have a Asilomar with just foster and just adoption.
But you have foster numbers in the daily numbers.
Yes, ma'am, but I'm saying, but the beginning number and the ending number is to equate to what is the animals in the shelter. Foster animals aren't in the shelter, so those numbers don't add up. Also, you gotta remember, while we close down, ma'am, I'm just going by the way these equations, so,
I think the misunderstanding is, are the animals in foster care, are they part of that number?
yeah, so they're not in the beginning and ending number, okay?
But they should be.
You have a
Okay,
number.
okay, but what we were asked to do
Yeah.
by that number was report how many animals we have in the shelter, how many animals are being adopted, how many animals are being rescued, how many animals are being fostered, how many animals are being euthanized, and anything other that happens. So if it dies in foster, it dies in kennel. So when we're asked to do this, I kind of said that those numbers are not going to add up. Plus, when one's done at the end of the day, animal control might be bringing an animal in at night. So the end of the day number and the beginning of the day, the next number, also won't necessarily add up.
So, but in the end, when you take a look at, you take a set of dates, that will work.
You
So-
do realize that if you were a bank and you said.
Every animal is counted for.
Every animal's kind of,
No, they're not. You have to put them within a parameter of 24 hours, and when you start that 24 hours, it's up to you. But if animal control brings somebody in at 11 o'clock, it's gotta go in either the day it comes in
So
or the
that gets
following
reported
day.
out in the next day's numbers.
okay, if someone,
But it
hold on,
comes
hold on.
in.
Flowery shirt lady in the back,
Eric,
that's a question.
Eric, this is important, this is important, okay. Let me just kind of redo this, and I can ask the question, I can answer the question that is asked. If someone says, we should publish everything that shows animals inside foster care, as well as inside the shelter, then we can put that number out. I was making the request as it was asked of me.
Yeah, and me being new in the animal shelter world, I'm thinking, how many animals are coming in every day? How many are leaving through the various methods, and what is the ending number? And I'm like you, I'm a finance guy, so it drives me nuts that I don't get a report that I can balance to. When he explains it to me, I understand it mythically speaking, just not logically speaking.
Can we look at it as?
Is there a better
how many
way for us
animals are
to
in the
report
system?
these numbers?
And it's been driving me crazy the whole time, because I've been getting kind of the same answer, but when you go and check the nation's, you know, the gold star is, you know, it's a Solmar and,
Shelter animal count. But we can put those numbers out that way.
So we would add in all the fosters that are out.
But then,
Sure, those are all the animals, they're still part of,
But they're part of
They're
the
still-
no,
daily.
I'm just trying to understand this. The animals that are out in foster, and even the ones that have been adopted out but have not yet been altered, they are still county property, correct? And they're still in the system, correct?
There's so not as far as the way the report has been set up historically.
Okay, but,
I understand what
I
you're
mean,
asking.
but that's the way it's supposed, it used to have to be that way, or that's the way it was supposed to be.
We don't change.
That's what we were told to say,
Those that are
like,
adopted.
okay, even though this animal hasn't been altered, it's
Still
still,
aren't.
this is provisional.
It's a
Adoption.
conditional adoption,
Right.
and it only gets formalized.
But they've still gotta be on.
Right.
Okay,
But-
look, everybody,
For
obviously
numbers
the
wise.
reporting needs to be better. Go ahead, ma'am.
No,
This lady's really been trying to answer the
But
question.
we're getting.
How many, do y'all wanna hear more about this reporting?
Yeah.
Okay,
All right, let's hear more about the reporting.
let's figure this out. Because I wanna get y'all information that is
Mine is about
something that you
Oh, well then
understand.
why don't you go ahead and ask your question about that?
Mine's about reporting as well, it's just more when it goes to the archives online, and it's broken down to when they're euthanized, if it's illness severe, condition severe, injury severe, behavior severe, aggression, behavior manageable. Like, I just didn't know if there's definitions for those.
I mean, I'm gonna look at Shirley, because I'm not sure if part of Shirley's question is gonna tie into this. But again, that goes to the Silvermar Accords,
Yes.
and it goes to what has been discussed in court, which is a pet evaluation matrix that kind of says, here's the criteria that you need to hit each of those.
To be
So-
after each of those
That's all
categories.
being listed out now.
Yeah, because
It will be well-defined, veterinarians will say this animal falls in this category.
So this
And we'll all be
animal is
well-defined.
behavior manageable, but they're gonna be euthanized, so it's under that one?
do we look,
Because there's that on there, so I just didn't know like what those definitions were. Can we have access to that matrix to see what it
general matrix?
Ms. Cusack,
Okay, sure we can help.
Excuse me. First of all, I totally disagree with the daily ins and outs because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about that, and we really need to look at the big picture. Asilomar Accords was developed several years ago by a group of veterinarians to standardize how shelters were going to account for all the animals coming in and out of their shelter. It is on the internet. And it categorizes them into healthy, unhealthy, treatable, unhealthy, manageable, unhealthy, not treatable, something like that. There's 4 categories. And in addition to, obviously, there's a little tweaking into what one shelter may consider treatable or manageable. And so there is a shelter database project, and they've also asked for shelters to send in their Asilomar Accords, but also say, what is your evaluation matrix look like that says, for instance, what category parvo would go into, or what category would Demodex, I'm not a dog person. So, those criteria out there, is it on Maddie's or Best Friends? What, Asilomar? No,
You can just Google Asilomar
You can
Accords.
Google.
Yeah.
So it's out there, they're doing a whole database and inviting shelters to participate in that. Generally, what we do is, we need to have a little deep dive into how Chameleon was mapped behind the scenes for that standard report, just to make sure that everything's going in the appropriate line. Dr. Gentry says it's not going into the appropriate line. It doesn't give you, it says we're gonna euthanize or kill certain animals because they are in they could be unmanageable or, I can't even think of the categories. That doesn't mean that they're automatically on the list for euthanasia. That's just a categorization. But we do it monthly, and overall, most Target Zero and everybody else, they want to look at the stats also on an annual basis. Because if you're familiar with the shelter business, you realize that January is usually a really good month for shelters. May, June, July, August is horrible months for shelters because of puppy and kitten season. So you really have to look at what your overall trends are. And when you look at whether a shelter or a community is, quote, no-kill, you're looking at annual numbers, not monthly numbers, because you can have 95% save rate in January and have 70% in July. So you have to look at the whole year. And I think that we're getting too down into the what happened today instead of looking what is our overall trend and where are we going, because that's where we have to set our strategy up.
I think the daily numbers have given people an insight into the shelter as far as.
I agree.
Giving
And
them
I agree with that, but I would like to see us publish our Asilomar Accords
That
on
would be
a monthly
great.
basis, and I would like to have
Yeah.
bar part trends for 12
And
months.
a couple of things,
So that is more helpful than some of the graphics that have been presented in the past.
Dr. Hayden, I think, and these are gonna be kind of pointed questions, the parvo puppies, if you could explain, some of these puppies were euthanized, I think, last week.
Sure.
at-
Tuesday.
at
12 that came in
one of
one
these
day.
meetings.
After the
And then
commissioners meeting.
the second thing is, can you address, there seems to be some belief that animals are euthanized in the shelter and you're not counting for them. Can you, at least speak from the heart on that issue? And
EU counts are easy because every animal gets a number and every number is reported. That's a period statement. There's no way around it.
And I'm gonna ask, I need people to trust that until you have proof, or you can bring something showing that animals are being euthanized and not reported. Because that's one of the big things that I try to deal with all the time, and I've gone up there, I've never seen it, I've tried to talk to people inside the shelter, people on the advisory board, no one has ever, there's been claims, but no one's ever been able to say, here's a picture of the dog that died and wasn't accounted for.
Hold on.
Wait, didn't you have a question about the parvo?
So-
Yeah, and the parvo pup.
But on the continuation of the second point,
And
so.
by the way, I'm sorry, we're gonna stop at 3:30, so we have 30 minutes to go.
Okay, so everything's accounted for, and the numbers that I sent to you, and going back to the Asilomar course, the Asilomar court gives you one way to discount your euthanasia, which is if a owner requested euthanasia for an underweight, unhealthy, I can't remember, that does not count. The numbers reported to you, whether it was, if it was a owner requested that would have not counted towards the Asilomar, every single animal that's euthanized is in the number that's presented to you. There's no ands, if, or buts about it.
Regarding all that, how do you handle the puppies and kittens? Are they given a number too?
Yes, every animal that comes to our shelter gets a number. And it's just.
So the parvo puppies, if you wanna answer what happened?
Yeah, so parvo puppies, so, and I know there was supposed to be, a conference in Austin, people came back and like, man, Austin's doing 88%, success rate on parvo puppies, and that's awesome. But, one, it's not at their city shelter, it's at Austin Pets Alive, correct? And they have a parvo ward, which is a building outside of their shelter where they're housing this disease. So we had what was probably a 4-year-old dog die of parvo the other day in our shelter, because it was in somebody's home and it was never vaccinated and it got disease. So it is very, very difficult to treat those animals in place. So we certainly in the past have gone out to foster, and we still have fosters that treat parvo, and they do it very well in their homes. But you were overwhelmed with 12 parvo puppies. That is not something that can go to one house or one foster and be done. Nor is it something we're going to keep in our shelter for any time. So we're set up. If we have a parvo puppy and somebody says, I want to take that, we're going to say yes.
Did you reach out to anybody to take any of the puppies?
So
Is there
was
any
it
of
clear
them
on?
save any?
Yes, they were on our page. They were on the pin page. We didn't have fosters. That particular litter was posted. Parvo is in the community. I am working with a woman who has a parvo positive puppy out of a litter of 4. So, it's out there alive and well. And it is savable in many cases, but you've got to have somebody able to step up pretty quickly and be prepared for some pretty messy stuff along the way.
Stephanie?
Yeah, okay, Dr. Hayden, I have a couple questions on behalf of the fosters at Kinsey here. So one of the questions they had was about the senior animals. So I have some, I deal a lot with the foster people, and all the time, we've been 8 years at the shelter. So they rely on me to let them know about animals that need a little extra help getting out. So I have several fosters who like to foster senior animals, and they've been told that they either need to adopt those animals or they have to stay at the shelter. What do you have to say about that?
So, right, a healthy animal isn't necessarily one that needs to be fostered in particular. So if that animal goes to somebody's house and it's not taken off sites, it's not going to get adopted.
Right.
So, and we have a history in our shelter of those animals going to somebody's house and never getting out, and then they stack
But
up.
but like somebody was saying over here, it is a case-by-case basis, because I
But
have
we
several
will
very.
compassionate adoption those, and they can have them for free.
Yeah, but they don't want to keep them, they want to find another home for them, but if they have to do it that way, then you take away the options of condos and things like that, where they can't utilize those services for those animals.
And they can certainly get with a rescue and do it that way, so.
Right, but, again, it's kind of, should be a case-by-case basis. I mean, the animals, as you know, seniors are one of the first ones that were shut down at the shelter, so people want to get them out, but they do want to utilize off-sites, they do want to utilize condos. And Marcia knows, I mean, I call Marcia a lot, her cat people on things, rescues can't take everybody. So then that person's gonna have that animal and no way of getting it
But we need
adopted.
to hook that person up with those rescues that can do it. I know Jane Holman said, can I rescue all the senior cats? I'm like, yep, they're yours. That's easy.
Well, but she told me that she would take them under the rescue, but then the person still has to find them a home, but we're still back to the original thing I said then.
And then in our back door, there's still animals coming in every day. So we can't house that animal for months and months. So in my opinion, it's better for you to adopt it for free.
You're not housing the animal if it's in a foster home.
It's still on our books. So, and we've said.
But it's not your overhead.
Yeah, it is.
But
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, because it's medication and everything else.
But
Okay,
how is
one
that
still
one
counting
question
responsibility?
there's a question that several people asked me to ask you on the internet, and that is, apparently there is money that comes in that's donated, I guess at the front counter or through some sort of window. People people are wondering, where does that money go to and what is it specifically being used for?
So until the new budget cycle, that money went back through general funds. Commissioners Court late July-ish, I don't remember exactly, we put forth a measure was approved that effective with the new fiscal year, a new cost center, for lack of a better term, was created to house the donations. So as of October 1st, any money that comes through the front counter, okay, not that is online, because online is on the website, goes to Operation Pencil Live, our partner. It would be money that's actually mailed in or sent to the front office, comes in, we have to deposit it, it will go, and then, like I said, this just started as of October 1st, so there's now money that's, that will be accumulating in there. And then we will work with the commissioners and et al. onto what we then do with those funds and how we use those. Though we've committed, when we talked to the commissioners before getting this approved, that it's not going to salary, it's not going to overhead, we will use it for the betterment of the animals.
So, and then
And anyone, if you guys would like, I mean, again, this is new, it just started, so we're in November. We can look at posting what the balance is. I can tell you that no money has been spent out of that account. As a matter of fact, they finally just got some of the money moved in.
So, and that was a very specific question, what comes through the front window? So if it comes through the front window, it goes to a cashier going to the county. There's a box up front that goes to OPA. So if money goes to OPA, there's a separate account that those get spent on medical needs. So that fund is exhausted right now. So as we build it back up, we can get back to
So
offsite.
who determines how the OPA money is spent?
OPA.
Well,
No.
let me address that, because I know it's gonna be an issue. What we've done from the start, since we became a partner, and the two things that we presented with when we did become a partner were outside vetting, so things that they could not do, the doctors at the shelter determined they could not do there. They needed to go to an outside vet for an x-ray or something like that. Then they come back, the report would come back to the shelter, and they determine what the next step is for that animal. So outside vetting and then off-sites. So a lot of the PetSmarts and Pet codes require you to have a partnership agreement. And we have that agreement with both entities, so we can allow NCAS fosters to bring their dogs and cats to their events and adopt them. With regard to the money, we have kept that separate from our OPA business. So anything that comes in through the MCS website, the MCS Facebook, the donation box there in the lobby goes into a separate account that we manage it, but it's separate. And that only goes for outside vetting. So when I get a request, it used to be from Dr. Crab, who come through, we need an x-ray on this animal, I basically just copy that request, send it to Fair Branch as our primary vet, we do use others, but send it to them, approved for under OPA Shelter Pets, and that gets, appointment gets set, and they take their animal and get the animal done. The donations have gone down, I believe, seemingly, and we've done a couple fundraisers specifically for that. We did
How for him?
Howl for Hanks,
Okay.
we had donated tickets, and they were auctioned or raffled, and all that money went into that account. And then we did the Woodweed's Spirit Night, or whatever you call it, Give Back Night, and all that money went in there. And we're looking at some other options, and we've had several people in the community offer to help us with some fundraising for the shelter, specifically for that account. Much appreciated. I mean, we're an all-volunteer group, we're trying to do our own fundraising, and very much appreciated when somebody comes up with an idea that could help raise money for the shelter. We continue to get those online donations, and that account will build, but right now it's depleted.
And they do make annual, or not annual, reports, quarterly reports to the Animal Advisory Board. It's an open set of books, so.
Yes, and let me just add one more thing. Just for historical record, 80% of what came through into that account last year was between November and the end of the year.
We have.
occasionally, we have, and, you know.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna do Flowery Lady, Bobby, and then Natalie. Robin.
I'm going back to, it's on page 2 of the plan, I printed it out, with the animal pleas, like the too few animal pleas that it says. It says it's in process, I didn't know, it says the pleas are gonna go to the commissioners, and they're gonna share them on social media. And I just wondered when that was gonna happen, because last Tuesday after the commissioners court, five of our dogs were euthanized without any pleas, and it was really hard.
Some of them never had pleas, they had multiple pleas, and they hadn't, and they were still there. No, over time they've had.
Those
pleas.
5?
Over multiple time, there was multiple pleas. So,
And
over time.
I looked on every.
So
on
not that
every
day,
page, I couldn't
not that
find
day, but
anything.
over time, there'd been pleas for those animals. So, and it was all about length of stay. So, and I hate it as much as you do.
Well, the marketing plan that Bill was talking about was the excellent choice for that. Because one thing, I'm sorry.
And we are happy, Evan and we will put out pleas on any that we're copied in on, or you guys let us know, hey, we're, trying to get these dogs out, or this is happening. We'd be happy to get it out. I think I've got about 7,800 people that follow me on there, and then on Twitter. I mean, I can help put the message out there. I just need to get it. I don't.
Do you have a follow-up for?
Rob,
No?
Rob, so I understand your point too. So, and again, some of this came out of the workshop, and again, this is where we all got to do a good job together, because part of it, and everyone, the people know me, I repeat a lot of stuff, but I'm big on semantics, because it's all about words and it's all about phrase and how things are used. So too many pleas. We also hear from other people. It's not on this, but we hear from other people. There's too many pleas. If you plea every animal, then it's kind of like the boy who cried wolf and dilutes it. So what is the right answer? We all need, I don't disagree.
Marketing.
Well,
Well,
and
it's
then
not-
a
it's okay, but it's not
consolidated
just-
report would be nice. Like I say, I've been asking for a length of stay report. And that
We
would be
talked
nice.
we were down at Barker the other day and asked how to run it, how to do it.
Yeah, because that's what I get from Bark, is just a long list of animals. It's not 20, it's the one consolidated.
I imagine this week we'll be able to run it.
Yeah. And
Okay, Bobby, you're up.
I'd like to know who's on the advisory committee, how were they selected?
I'm on it,
I'm on it.
Commissioner Clark, Stephanie Gator.
Can we have somebody write all that down?
Sure,
so
and
it'll be in the
it's
minutes?
actually.
It's on court record. It was
It's
approved to the
by
court.
law, there's certain positions that have to be a veterinarian or a shelter employee, has to be a county official, or has to be somebody working with either a rescue or foster group, or, so there's certain criteria. And while I'm talking, I'm gonna make one little announcement that's of positive nature. We're getting lights in the dog park for the dog walking. We didn't make it by our daylight savings time deadline due to I got the easement worked out with a landowner, so the lights will be there hopefully within the next 30 days, 6 weeks.
What's the term of the board?
Sorry.
Rotating for
Okay,
years.
all right.
3 years? I think it's 3 years, right?
Yeah, I'm rotating off here real quick.
Is it, not everybody rotates at the same time?
No.
I assume you
It's
have
a
some that are 2 or 3
rotation.
If you have
positions.
an interest, just email me a resume and your desire, and we'll consider it.
The lady in black.
Hi, going back to the dogs that didn't get a plea, again, I think part of it is about communication and the transparency. It's not that they didn't get a plea in the past, it's the fact that there's certain dogs that when they're due for euthanasia, get that 48-hour plea or the 72-hour plea, and these ones didn't. So it's the house that decided when one gets a plea before euthanasia and a different one, some of them real volunteer favourites, and it really hurts the volunteer community, and I mean, they really hurt because of it. It's just, how is that decided? How do they get a final plea or
So a couple
not?
months ago, I said I didn't want any more expiration dates, because I'm a person, because one, I worked in the back as a veterinarian, I always hated, when you walk by a cage, I'm like, man, this dog's got 4 hours left. I don't like that. So, and I didn't want to put a date on how long we're staying, but we've talked about how long is too long for our shelter. So that's not every shelter, but Montgomery County in particular, so we put that 120 days, we put 4 months, because that kind of encompassed most people, not everybody, and I understand that. So, were those animals on the focus list in particular, 2 weeks prior?
There was two on the focus list, but one of them was only there 30-something days.
So, and that may be an animal that couldn't get along with any other animal. So, and if you can't get along with anybody, it means you're taking up a space that, right now, we're putting 2 animals per cage, or per run. So, when we do that, if you can't get along with anybody, you know, you may get euthanized. There was also another animal that had penned an employee, it may have been that one, I don't know which one it was. But if you pen an employee, you're going to be euthanized. So, and
If you want it,
pen an employee, if you,
can, you
like,
got like
the only way to get out is there, and you got an employee on the other side, and you're threatening to attack an employee, that dog's going to be euthanized.
Which is what she's talked to you about with the behavior, getting
Absolutely.
somebody a behavior.
So, and I've been talking
Okay.
about getting our shelter fixed
So-
from the inside out.
The lady in the pink shirt's been waiting to ask a question.
Thank you. Thank you for this meeting. I hope we'll have further meetings like this, and we can all have a chance, because everybody here has good motive. I'm gonna just, focus on the euthanasia. I tried to ask you about this before we got interrupted. What is the method, because if I take my dog, heaven forbid, and I have had to take my dogs in the past, they got old, they got sick, it broke my heart, I had to take them back. I would like to know that those animals at the shelter get the same loving treatment that, and that I would take at the vet, and I would say that, I know you all use phenobarbital, but what about the sedation, what about the anxious ones, what about the,
We use a-
protocol before they're injected, and the promazine?
So typically we use an IV injection of phenobarb,
Yeah.
and they're euthanized. So animals that are really excited to get a drug called xylazine, it's an alpha-2 agonist, and it will anesthetizing.
Okay, who makes that decision, and do you have qualified vet techs who do this?
We have euthanasia techs that are qualified to this stage.
And so anytime this is done by a qualified tech. Is there any law that says a veterinarian has to be present?
No. So there's a law that says you have to have at least euthanasia techs you can use in a shelter setting. They have to go to a class, they have to certify, I think, every 3 years.
And you have these at the shelter?
We have them at the shelter. So the law also says, just to be very clear, that you could do it, but you just have to be qualified in 120 days. We do not use that clause.
No.
So, I'm just saying, not you in particular, but anybody can do it. We just don't use that. Our euthanasia techs are qualified, they're certified.
Hey, but that's what I wanted to determine. And what about this intracardiac, the heart sticks? Does that have to be done on top of the piece? Is that a necessity?
So you cannot do a cardiac stick unless they're anesthetized or heavily sedated.
And what do they sedate those related with?
Xylazine. Or usually phenobarbital first, not phenobarbital, I'm sorry about that.
Okay, so this is very carefully monitored?
Yes, ma'am. So no other animal can be present. We follow the law, and then we also follow the ADA guidelines.
Excellent.
Okay, the young lady in the red shirt is losing blood in her arm.
Thank you. I just want to say that a lot of stuff gets said on social media by a lot of people that don't spend a lot of time in the shelter. These fine people up here spend a lot of time in the shelter. I try when I'm not at work. It comes home with me because my mom works there. I understand that you have volunteer favorite puppies that you really like, but when nobody shows up to even take those dogs to an off-site, nobody cares to play them on their personal page. These people do a lot all day. They have stuff that they probably could be doing right now, but they're here to try and talk to you guys. And so I think that respect and patience would go a really, really long way. And I think that if everybody would stop attacking people, then those people would probably be more willing to sit down and talk with you and understand your policies and stuff, because going at somebody angry very, very rarely gets you very far. And I mean, we're all adults here. I think we understand that. I think that people need to realize that stuff going through the county and through policies and stuff, it takes time. And with these people wanting a 30-day policy or an overnight change or
an explanation for every single thing that happens. That takes time and it takes effort, and these people have full-time jobs, and people getting their feelings hurt isn't always more important to them than saving an animal's life. And I think that if everybody put the animals up as highly as these people do, then we would actually get more.
Oh, please don't suggest that.
Please don't
suggest
No
that.
idea.
Okay,
Leslie,
No idea.
I have
I don't think she's.
two questions. One, I had gone up there to evaluate a boxer on a Sunday, and there ended up being multiple ones. And I wanted to go back to the X-ray question. So you all don't have X-ray equipment there at your CAS. Who determines and at what point do you determine when a dog needs to be X-rayed? Because one of the dogs that I ended up going up there to visit, she was tagged as aggressive, and she wasn't aggressive at all. She just happened to have a hip injury that I pulled her that day and took her to my vet, and we paid for hip surgery for her, and now she's totally fine. So at what point does somebody determine that this dog should be X-rayed, and then let's not tag them as aggressive because they have an injury? Let's say that they have an injury, let the rescue groups know about that, so then they can know that going into the pool, and then we can set our finances.
So veterinarians do now. So, and forever it was, you know, there was one veterinarian staff, or sometimes it was me that would get to the back. We now have, well, functionally we have 2 veterinarians right now, and as soon as Dr. Crab's off maternity, we'll have 3, and veterinarians will make that decision. So.
No, wait,
And then my
Commissioner Clark wanted to say something?
I do want to say this.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were.
Go ahead.
I just want to say this, you know, because you go to these meetings, I didn't get to ask my question, frustrated. We're not going to have that, because when we leave here, if you've got something that you wanted to ask of the commissioners or Dr. Hayden or Mark, please send us an email. Just state it November 14th, animal shelter meeting. And if you got a question that you didn't get answered here today, I'll assure you that it will be answered, or we'll be consulted among ourselves and get back with you. So just, I mean, an hour and a half to solve the animal shelter problem is not a viable option. I appreciate Eric getting this group together and us having this talk. This probably needs to be the first of many meetings, but don't feel like you don't have a voice once you leave here. I want you to reach out to us with that in the subject line so it doesn't get lost. And we will answer your question.
And I think meetings like this should be much larger. I know this was announced last minute. It wasn't on either commissioner's media in any way. It was only on yours.
It's also the time of day you're having.
Yeah, it's hard.
Time of day, no, I agree, and we should vary that up a little bit. I have no problem with that.
Well, the last one was at night, so it's more.
Right, that's one of the reasons we did this one.
But there's a lot of people that didn't know that aren't.
Several times. We just
Wait a minute.
Wait, there's a meeting. I understand the strain hold and the isolation, but why are there 6? Does it take that many rooms?
There's not 6.
How many
So,
rooms?
Isolation, then the 2 straight
Only
rooms.
2 rooms?
And then 2 straight rooms, so there's 4, because there's a, well, I wouldn't count babies, because that's usually.
But it's a locked room, so.
Yeah. So, but I think you're specifically talking about blue room, because that's our buffer room.
Well, it's
It
like
used to
for
be a-
months this has been going on, and I still don't really have a clear, like, why are they in there so long?
So,
She's reading something that, you're with the
No,
facts.
so you have that stray room, and those are animals that are newly to our shelter, and they're getting exposed to disease because shelters are full of disease. You can't help that. When I went to boot camp in Marine Corps, you're gonna get sick. Everyone does, and get over it. So, but that blue room is that buffer room between our adoptions and our stray hold that, as you move up, you're gonna get sick in that 10 to 12 day period. And if you're sick, you can go back to isolation, or if you're healthy, you can get up to adoption floors.
But it says that some are in there for like 4 and 5 months.
So that's not accurate. So,
Well,
no animals in the bag for 4 or 5 months.
when Dixie was euthanized, it was said that she was in a locked room for 4 months.
Where did you get that information?
Well,
Facebook.
that was like the
Facebook.
poster, and
That's not true.
she was in an adoption room.
We will have to go back and look at that individual.
Okay, I'd like to know, but it's never really been cleared up.
So yeah, no, if you're getting your information from social media, you are being misinformed.
But that's what I'm saying, is at the
100%.
commissioner court meeting, when you're specifically asked, it kind of goes, like, all over, and I really don't.
So if you're talking about the poster that gets held up,
No. No, when it's asked about the locked rooms, it's never really clearly, like, we have 2 rooms for stray souls, when they leave there, they go to isolation or adoption. It's never clearly.
I think I've said that a couple times before. So would you guys?
Okay, folks, we've got 4 minutes to go. You're next. Let's ask fast questions, fast answers. I'll let you go next. Go ahead.
Okay, Dr. Hayden, so I've had several fosters that have said they're afraid to bring their fosters back to the shelter for either sick clinic, shot clinic, or spay neuters, because they're worried that they're gonna have to let them stay there. So I had a brand new cat foster. All she had was 5 kittens she fostered from the shelter. Great foster. And she went in for shots, and I guess Dr. Gentry told her, bring your cats back next